The crowd erupted in shock as the HOA meeting descended into chaos. Cell phones captured every brutal moment as a heated argument between neighbors escalated out of control. But none could have predicted the shocking twist that followed. A brutal assault caught in chilling detail on live video. What started as a routine community gathering had exploded into a nightmare, and the entire world was watching. Sasha gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles turning white. The monthly HOA meeting was always stressful, but tonight the tensions were palpable. Her neighbor Frank, face flushed with anger, was shouting about overdue HOA fees and the crumbling state of the community playground. "This is unacceptable," Frank bellowed, spit flying from his lips. "Our kids can't even play safely because the equipment is falling apart. But God forbid we raise the monthly dues by $10 to cover the repairs." Sasha took a deep breath, steeling herself to respond. "Frank, I understand your frustration, but—" "No," Frank interrupted, slamming his fist on the table. "I'm not going to just sit back and let this neighborhood go to hell. We need to take action, and we need to do it now." The other HOA members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging nervous glances. Sasha could feel the tension building, a palpable energy in the room. She opened her mouth to try and diffuse the situation, but Frank was already barreling ahead. "That's it, I'm done talking," he growled, pushing his chair back and standing up. "If you all won't do anything, then I'll take matters into my own hands." Sasha watched in horror as Frank reached behind his chair, pulling out a folded metal chair. Before she could react, he had brandished it like a weapon, swinging it directly at her head. The crowd erupted in screams as the chair collided with a sickening thud. Sasha felt a blinding pain shoot through her skull, and then everything went black. Sasha's eyes fluttered open to the sound of hysterical shouting. She was on the floor, her head throbbing with pain. Blinking through the blur, she could see Frank towering over her, the folded chair still gripped tightly in his hands. "This is your fault," he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "If you people would just listen to me, none of this would have happened." Sasha tried to push herself up, but the world was spinning. She could feel a warm trickle of blood running down the side of her face. Around them, the other HOA members were frozen in shock, some cowering in their seats, while others frantically dialed 911. Through the chaos, Sasha spotted her husband, Jason, rushing towards her. His face was a mask of terror as he dropped to his knees beside her. "Sasha, oh my God, are you okay?" he cried, his hands trembling as he gently touched the gash on her forehead. "I'm fine," Sasha lied, wincing at the pain. "Just get him away from me." Jason's eyes narrowed as he glared up at Frank, who was still ranting and waving the chair menacingly. "You're damn right, I'm going to get him away from you," he growled, leaping to his feet. Before Sasha could protest, Jason had launched himself at Frank, tackling him to the ground. The two men grappled and rolled, the folded chair clattering to the floor as they exchanged blows. Sasha watched in horror, her heart pounding in her ears. The sound of sirens in the distance only seemed to spur the men on, their fighting growing more frenzied by the second. Sasha knew she had to do something, but her head was spinning and her vision was blurring. She could feel darkness creeping at the edges of her consciousness. Just as Sasha was about to lose her grip on reality, a booming voice cut through the chaos. "Police. Everybody freeze." Sasha's head snapped up at the sound of the officer's voice. Uniformed police had flooded into the room, their guns drawn and faces tense. In an instant, Jason and Frank froze, both men slowly raising their hands in surrender. "On the ground, now," the officer barked, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "Both of you, down on the ground." Sasha watched in a daze as the two men complied, Jason shooting her a worried glance as he was handcuffed and pulled to his feet. Frank, his face twisted in a scowl, muttered under his breath as the officers hauled him away. "It's about damn time you showed up." Sasha tried to stand, but a wave of dizziness sent her crashing back down. One of the officers rushed to her side, gently helping her up. "Ma'am, are you all right? We need to get you medical attention," he said, his voice laced with concern. Sasha nodded weakly, her vision blurring with tears. "My husband. Is he?" "He'll be fine, ma'am," the officer assured her. "We're just going to have a few questions for all of you. But first, let's get you to the hospital." As Sasha was helped out of the room, she caught a glimpse of the chaos around her. Papers were scattered everywhere, chairs overturned, and the other HOA members huddled in terrified clusters. And through it all, the faint sound of sirens grew louder, a haunting reminder of the madness that had just unfolded. Sasha gripped the officer's arm tightly, her mind racing. What on earth had just happened? And how would she and Jason ever recover from this nightmare? The blaring sirens and flashing lights of the ambulance faded into the distance as Sasha was rushed to the hospital. Her head throbbed with every jostle of the vehicle, and she could feel the blood trickling down the side of her face. But despite the pain, her mind was racing. What had just happened back at the HOA meeting? 1 minute, they had all been gathered for a routine discussion, and the next, chaos had erupted. She replayed the scene over and over in her mind, the image of Frank's crazed expression and the terrifying crack of the chair against her skull searing itself into her memory. And Jason. Sasha's heart sank as she thought of her husband, hauled away in handcuffs for trying to defend her. Would he be okay? Would he get into trouble for fighting back? The uncertainty was gnawing at her, and she wished more than anything that she could be by his side. As the ambulance pulled up to the emergency room, Sasha was quickly whisked inside and ushered into an examination room. The nurses were gentle but efficient, cleaning the gash on her forehead and checking her vitals. Sasha answered their questions as best she could, but her mind kept drifting back to the chaos of the HOA meeting. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?" One of the nurses asked, her brow furrowed in concern. Sasha took a deep breath, trying to push back the rising panic. I'm not really sure," she admitted. 1 minute, we were just having a meeting, and the next, my neighbor Frank. He just lost it. He hit me with a chair, and then my husband tried to stop him, and—" her voice trailed off, a lump forming in her throat. The nurse nodded sympathetically. "Don't worry, the police will get to the bottom of it. For now, let's just focus on getting you patched up, okay?" Sasha nodded weakly, wincing as the nurse gently cleaned the gash on her forehead. As the nurse worked, Sasha couldn't help but wonder what was happening back at the HOA meeting. Were the other members still there, giving their statements to the police? And what about Jason? Was he still in custody, or had they let him go? The uncertainty was eating her alive, and Sasha knew she wouldn't be able to rest until she had answers. She had to find a way to contact her husband to make sure he was all right. But for now, all she could do was wait and hope that the nightmare would soon be over. Jason paced back and forth in the small holding cell, his mind racing. 1 minute, he had been rushing to Sasha's aid. The next, he was being hauled away in handcuffs by the police. It was all a blur, a chaotic nightmare that he couldn't seem to wake up from. As he replayed the events in his mind, his anger started to boil over. How dare Frank attack his wife like that? The guy was unhinged, a ticking time bomb, just waiting to explode. And now, because Jason had tried to stop him, they were both facing the consequences. He clenched his fists, the metal of the handcuffs biting into his wrists. If only he had gotten to Sasha sooner, maybe he could have prevented all of this. But now, he was trapped in this cell, unsure of her condition or what was happening back at the HOA meeting. The sound of footsteps in the hallway outside drew Jason's attention, and he rushed to the bars, peering out. "Excuse me, officer," he called out, his voice laced with desperation. "Please, can you tell me how my wife is doing?" The officer paused, glancing up from his clipboard. "Your wife? The woman who was hit with the chair?" Jason nodded, his heart pounding. "Yes, that's her. Sasha. Is she okay?" The officer frowned, his brow furrowing. She was taken to the hospital by ambulance. From what I understand, she was injured pretty badly. Jason felt his stomach drop. Injured? How badly? He demanded, gripping the bars tightly. I'm afraid I don't have all the details, the officer replied, his tone apologetic. But the EMTs seemed concerned about the head injury. You'll have to wait for the hospital to provide an update. Jason swallowed hard, his mind racing. Head injury. Ambulance. It was all too much to process. Sasha, his beautiful, vibrant Sasha, lying hurt and alone in a hospital room. And he was stuck here, powerless to do anything. Please, he begged, his voice cracking. Can't you at least let me go check on her? I need to be there for her. The officer shook his head, his expression sympathetic. I'm sorry, but you'll have to stay here until we can sort out what happened. The investigation is still ongoing. Jason sagged against the bars, defeat washing over him. All he could do now was wait and pray that Sasha was going to be okay. The uncertainty was tearing him apart, and he knew he wouldn't be able to rest until he saw her safe and sound. Sasha stared at the blank hospital room wall, her mind whirling. The doctors had stitched up the gash on her forehead and declared that she had a mild concussion, but she still felt disoriented and unsure. And the constant throbbing in her head was a painful reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Jason, and she wondered what had become of him. Was he still in custody, being interrogated by the police? Or had they released him, allowing him to come to the hospital and check on her? The uncertainty was gnawing at her, and she felt completely powerless. Sasha closed her eyes, trying to push away the anxiety that was threatening to consume her. She had to stay strong, for Jason's sake. He was counting on her, and she couldn't let him down. Just then, the door to her room swung open, and Sasha's heart leaped. But instead of her husband, a police officer stepped inside, his expression grave. Ma'am, I need to ask you a few more questions about what happened at the HOA meeting, he said, his voice low and serious. Sasha nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. Of course, officer. Anything I can do to help. The officer pulled up a chair and sat down, his gaze unwavering. Can you walk me through the events again, from the beginning? I need to understand exactly what led to your neighbor, Frank, attacking you. Sasha took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. Well, like I told the other officers, we were just having our regular monthly meeting. Frank started getting angry about the HOA fees and the condition of the playground equipment. He was yelling and slamming his fist on the table. And then, she paused, the image of the folded chair hurtling towards her flashing in her mind. And then what? The officer prompted gently. And then he. Sasha swallowed hard, the reality of what had happened still sinking in. He grabbed a folded chair and just swung it at me. I didn't even have time to react. The officer nodded, scribbling something down on his notepad. And your husband, Jason, what was his role in all of this? Sasha felt a pang of worry. Jason, he was just trying to protect me. As soon as Frank attacked me, Jason rushed over and tackled him. They started fighting, and that's when the police showed up. The officer's brow furrowed. I see. Well, I want you to know that we're taking this incident very seriously. Frank has been arrested and charged with assault, and we're currently reviewing the evidence to determine if any other charges may be warranted. Sasha felt a small measure of relief, but the uncertainty about Jason's fate still weighed heavily on her. What about my husband? Is he going to be okay? The officer paused, his expression difficult to read. That's still under investigation. We need to review all the footage and witness statements before making any decisions. Sasha's heart sank. But he was just trying to protect me, she protested, her voice trembling. The officer held up a hand. I understand, ma'am. But the law doesn't always make exceptions, even in cases of self-defense. We'll do our best to ensure justice is served, but I can't make any promises." Sasha felt the weight of the officer's words settle on her chest, a sense of dread overwhelming her. She had to find a way to help Jason, no matter what it took. This couldn't be the end of their story. The harsh fluorescent lights of the police station felt like they were searing into Jason's skull. He had been sitting in this cold, sterile interrogation room for what felt like an eternity, his mind racing with worry for Sasha. The door suddenly swung open, and a gruff-looking detective strode in, clutching a thick file folder. "Mr. Reyes," the detective said, his voice gruff as he took a seat across the table. "I've been reviewing the evidence from the incident at the HOA meeting, and I have to say, you've put us in a bit of a predicament." Jason straightened in his chair, his heart pounding. "Detective, please, how is my wife? Is she okay?" The detective held up a hand. "Your wife is stable and being treated at the hospital. But that's not why we're here." He opened the file folder and began flipping through the pages. "According to witness statements and the footage we've reviewed, you attacked Mr. Frank Parker in a fit of rage, even after he had already assaulted your wife." Jason felt a surge of anger. "I was just trying to protect Sasha. That psycho was going to keep attacking her." "Be that as it may," the detective interrupted, his tone stern, "you still engaged in violence, even after the immediate threat had been neutralized. That's not self-defense, Mr. Reyes, that's assault." Jason clenched his fists, the handcuffs biting into his wrists. "So what? You're going to charge me too? After what that bastard did to Sasha?" The detective leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "I'm not saying that's what we're going to do. But the fact is, the circumstances here are complex, and we need to carefully consider all the evidence before making a decision." Jason stared at the detective, his mind racing. He had to find a way to convince him that he was innocent, that he had only been trying to protect his wife. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the odds were stacked against him. "Look, detective," he said, his voice low and earnest. "I know it might not seem that way, but I'm not the bad guy here. I was just trying to stop a madman from hurting the woman I love. Surely you can understand that." The detective sighed, rubbing his temples. "I understand your concern, Mr. Reyes. But the law doesn't always make exceptions, even in cases of self-defense. We have to look at the bigger picture here." Jason felt a lump forming in his throat. "So what happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "For now, you'll remain in custody while we continue our investigation," the detective replied. "I'm sorry, but that's the way it has to be." Jason nodded, his heart sinking. He knew that he was in for a long and difficult battle, but he wasn't about to give up. Not when Sasha's safety and his own freedom were on a line. Sasha paced nervously in the hospital hallway, her mind consumed by worry for Jason. After the police officer's discouraging words, she had felt a sense of dread settle over her. How could the law not recognize that Jason was simply trying to protect her? It just didn't seem fair. Just then, the sound of footsteps approaching drew her attention, and she whirled around to see a familiar face. "Frank?" Sasha exclaimed, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of confusion and anger. "What are you doing here?" Frank shifted uncomfortably, his gaze averted. I wanted to see how you were doing. After what happened." Sasha scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. "After what happened? You mean after you brutally attacked me with a chair in front of everyone?" "Yeah, I'm doing just great, thanks for asking." Frank winced, his cheeks reddening. "Look, Sasha, I didn't mean for things to go that far. I was just so angry, and I lost control. I never wanted to hurt you." Sasha stared at him, her disbelief evident. "You never wanted to hurt me. Are you kidding me? You could have killed me, Frank. And now my husband is in custody because he was trying to stop you." Frank shuffled his feet, his gaze firmly fixed on the floor. I know. And I feel terrible about it. That's why I wanted to come here and apologize. I hope you can forgive me." Sasha shook her head, her anger bubbling to the surface. "Forgive you? After what you did? Not a chance in hell, Frank. You need to leave, right now, before I call the police myself." Frank opened his mouth to respond, but a sudden commotion down the hallway caught their attention. Sasha's heart leaped as she recognized the familiar figure of her husband, walking free and unrestrained. "Jason," she cried, rushing towards him. Jason's face lit up with relief as he enveloped her in a tight embrace. "Sasha, thank God you're okay," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so worried about you." Sasha pulled back, her eyes searching his face. "But how? I thought the police were going to charge you." Jason grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Turns out, the video footage and witness statements were pretty conclusive. The detective saw that I was just trying to protect you from that lunatic." Sasha glanced over at Frank, who was now shrinking back against the wall, a look of pure fear on his face. "So what's going to happen to him?" "Oh, he's in a world of trouble," Jason replied, his expression hardening. "Assault, property damage, making terroristic threats. The list goes on. The cops are going to throw the book at him." Sasha felt a sense of justice wash over her, and she couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Good. He deserves it. As the police escorted a handcuffed Frank out of the hospital, Sasha and Jason embraced again, their relief and gratitude palpable. They had weathered the storm and emerged stronger for it. "Let's get out of here," Sasha murmured, her voice weary but content. "I think we could both use a little peace and quiet." Jason nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Sounds perfect to me." As they walked out of the hospital, Sasha couldn't help but glance back one last time, a small smile playing on her lips. The nightmare was finally over, and the future had never looked brighter.